my friends. Jerry Rosa there in the Rosa Stringworks Man Cave. Been real busy since I talked to you the last time. And I've got a nice long video clip for you that we'll look at here in just a minute. Did you just happen to see the press conference with the new press secretary, Caroline Levitt, I think is her name? Man, young gal, she seemed to be right on top of it. I mean, I was impressed. Those press people pretty much eat you alive, and I'll say one thing, that gal seemed like she had it together, and she brought it with her, and she kind of put them all in their place and explained everything, and I thought she did great. I was impressed. I think I'd vote for her for president. I was also watching Itchy Boots' video this morning, her one she just posted a few hours ago. She said she's headed to Kuwait next. She was out in a boat in a swamp, meeting some Arabs out in this swamp. Apparently, Saddam Hussein drained that swamp to get back at those people when he was in power, and they're trying to restore the swamp now because apparently at one time over 1 million people lived in that swamp, and now there's only a couple thousand that can live there. I don't know. She is one brave chick. I'll say that. I don't see how she communicates. She doesn't understand that particular language very well, and I saw her, translating with her phone there a few times, but she's just got a lot more courage than I've got. I've got a video here of me sawing some cedar on the homemade sawmill. And we might as well just get that going, and it'll last about 12 minutes or so, and then we'll talk some more. I decided to cut the big end of that log off to make shingles because it looked like a real clear end, and so I can get quite a few shingles out of that block. So I'll still have almost an 8-foot log here to get 2x6s out of, and that's fine. Well, the log has been turned up on its side. Now I'm going to square off the top. It's very important that you square the log to the platform so that you're cutting a square, cant. If you don't, it's not the end of the world, but it sure does make better lumber when you do. We got some decent lumber out of that, but I'm not sure that bottom one will be 1.5 inches. It might be a hair smaller. You can see that's a really nice one there, and this one's a really nice one here. But when I toss this one over here, look, the pressure inside it or something split it all the way down. What a waste. What a shame, man. Man, I tell you, you can't win for losing. It's really sad because, it's hard to come by. You have to do a lot of work to make that board. And then it just blows up on you like that. That's just not good. Oh, well, I have to cut my losses and just keep going. That's all you can do. Well, the sun's going down over the hill. It don't take long to get dark down here. And I'm night blind anyway. So I'm about ready to call it quits. I got that many more 2x6s cut and this one on here. But look at this. I just wanted to show you how accurate this thing saws. For a homemade sawmill, I cut that. Look how flimsy that is. That's an 1/8 inch thick or less. And it cut it that way the whole way. It's pretty amazing. I've got my next log ready for tomorrow morning. And I'll just leave it parked there overnight. I don't think it's going to snow or rain or anything, so it'll be fine. But that's another small log. But the little skid steer is perfect for these small logs. The little skid steer wouldn't even begin to pick up this big log. I don't think it'll pick up that one. I mean, it might pick it up. It could probably move it, like slide it around on the ground, but I don't think it'll pick it up in the air. In fact, we'll try that on camera and show you, but I don't think it'll pick it up. Those are really heavy. But we're going to put the sawmill away for tonight and get after it in the morning. Well, I've cut quite a few more 2x6s, and in case anybody ever, questions the fact that this wood is really wet when you saw it, especially like firewood, everything, look how dark these are here. That's just wet. That's what it is. And then see how dry this one is? Believe it or not, that one looked like this yesterday. So it's just, that's dry. These two are just soaking wet. They're brand new. I put 3 on here today. This one down here, this one, and this one. I think it came out to 11 boards that I got. I would have had 12, but one of them split right down the middle, as I think I showed on the video. That's going to help. I mean, that's not enough to do. I don't think that's enough to do the whole roof, but it ought to get me close, I think. So I think I'll start with that. We've got some warm days coming up, and I think I'm going to get started putting some of this on the roof. This wetter stuff on the top, I'll leave that to the last. I'll work on the stuff that's down here below because that stuff is really dry. It's been in here for several months. So I think we're good to go. You also get a lot of extra little boards laying around. Like this is just a 3/4 inch that's not perfect, but you can trim those edges up and then it is perfect, So there's a lot of that kind of wood laying around too. And there's my pile of shingles. I've got one more log. I think this little short log here I'm going to try to cut for shingles. So I've got a pretty good start on shingles too. That'll get me fairly far up one side. I doubt it'll get me all the way though. But we'll see where it takes us. Well, you can see there I was busy. The Sawmill works really good. I mean, I'm amazed how well it works. I mean, it doesn't have some of the bells and whistles that your commercial models have, but I didn't pay $20,000 for it either. I got more in that though than you probably would guess. I probably got $5,000 or $6,000 in it total. I don't know if I have quite that much, but I'm just guessing. I probably have close to that in it. Which you can buy some commercial models for you could when I built that. You could have bought them for $25,000, $3,000, somewhere in there. But they're real flimsy metal, honestly, when you buy them that cheap. They're not nearly as sturdy as that one is. And so, all in all, I felt like I did pretty well. I do not have plans for it because lots of people ask for plans. I don't have any plans at all for it. I just built it with my plans up here. That's the only thing I used. You notice that motor on there, that motor only costs $319, and it's got an electric start and everything. It's amazing. And the thing starts good, runs good. JR was at an auction not too long, or someplace, I think where he went. I don't remember now. Oh, I know what it was. He took Isaac to a lawnmower junkyard. Well, that guy had a whole bunch of those exact motors still in boxes. They're brand new, and he was selling them for I think $350 or something like that. And I told JR to get me one, so he did. And anyway, so I have an extra. What I mean is I have an extra one of those. So in case that motor ever goes out, I've got another one to put right in its place. Let's see. The only 2 changes I would make to that sawmill, if I made any at all, and I don't really feel like I have to make any, would be if I built it again, I'd probably build it with the saw blade itself in between the uprights. I put it out on the front edge of the uprights, and that makes it a bit front heavy, so I had to counterweight it on the back side. I have 2 50-pound weights hanging on the back side. That's not that big a deal. It rolls fine. It works fine as long as I keep those counterweights on it. No problem at all. The only other design change, and I'm not even sure I would change this at all, is just that the up and down is a little bit slow on it compared to a commercial model, but it is really accurate. I mean, it's you can easily measure 1/16 with it, no problem at all. You probably could do better than that if you really wanted to. In addition to building that sawmill there, you saw the little mini skid steer there moving the log. Well, I also made that grapple for the mini skid steer, and I built that, I don't know, just a month or two ago, a couple months ago, and that works really good. I serviced up that mini skid steer this morning too. I kept noticing it was kind of jerky and stuff, and turns out it was low on hydraulic oil, and that came from and it's not leaking. As far as I can tell, it doesn't leak at all. It just came from the factory that way, I guess, and so I added quite a bit more hydraulic oil to it this morning, and it really works really well now. Amazing what it'll do when you give it enough oil. I also this morning squared up the block that you saw that little block off the end of that log. Well, I squared that up today. I've got it ready to saw now for shingles. I haven't actually sawn the shingles out of it yet, but that'll give me quite a few more shingles. And I was planning to do that this afternoon or as soon as we're done here, except that I may change my plans and take that dang Kawasaki side-by-side, the one that Sue uses all the time, into the shop again. It's been sitting here for a month. It won't run. You can't get it started. I'm pretty sure it's the fuel pump again. And those things are so hard to work on. Plus, I paid for long-term maintenance on it, so it's kind of stupid for me to do the work. It would probably void the warranty on that anyway if I did. So I guess I'm going to load that thing up and haul that to the dealer this afternoon instead. I hate doing stuff like that. I like to just do it myself. It's just easier for me than it is to hassle with all the crap you got to hassle with. But anyway, so that's kind of the State of the Union here today. And let's move into the comment section and see what's going on. Eddie Turner looks like he was number one in there, and Wayne Blitz was right after that. And let's see. Dottie's praying for us. Thank you, Dottie. She said it's a beautiful day in South Carolina. Is Itchy Boots crazy or what? And Ronald Todd says, I think she's missing one somewhere. No, she just seems to have a great time no matter where she goes, no matter what she runs into. She just seems to make the best of it. I think it would drive me crazy going through all those checkpoints. I think I'd lose my mind. I mean, it seems like she does. I mean, I guess it's just the video editing side of it. But it looks to me like she's running into a checkpoint every 5 miles down the road, you know. But it's probably not quite that bad, but it sure looks like that. David Tharp, my friend said I'd never be any good at poetry because I'm dyslexic. I proved him wrong. So far, I've made 3 pictures and a vase. Oh, my gosh. That's Sue. I guess Sue's dyslexic too, because she makes clay, and she dug up her own clay out of the cave back there, and she's been making pots and things with that. Let's see. Dottie says, David, I don't get that one. Oh, I do, because that one there, I'll explain it. Poetry is pottery. That it's, if you're dyslexic, that could be pottery. For me, I'm pretty sure I'm dyslexic. I've never been diagnosed, but what's really weird about me, and you believe this or you don't have to believe it, I don't care. But if you turn the whole paragraph upside down, I can read it just about as fast that way as I can read it the normal way. It's a struggle to read it, period. So it doesn't really matter if it's upside down or if it's backwards or anything. I can read it just about as fast, either direction you want to put it. It's weird. It's just not easy being me. You just don't get it. I'm telling you for sure it isn't. Bill Rhodes, good afternoon, Jerry, and everyone else. Hey, you put me first. Let's see. Yeah, and then David's explaining the poetry, pottery type thing. Let's see. Vic Flowers, Good afternoon, Jerry and crew from rainy and cold Duncanville, Texas. Get to watch live today at home recovering from pneumonia. Well, Vic, I'm glad you're watching, but I'm sad you're sick, so hope you get better. I know all about the pneumonia thing. I've had that a lot. See, it reminds me, I need to get, I guess if I take that in there today, I guess I'll go back to Walgreens and get my follow-up for my shingles. Whew, I hate getting those stupid shots, but I might as well get that over with and get that done too. So maybe I can kill two birds with one stone. I don't even go into town hardly ever anymore, but might as well, if I'm going, I might as well, get it all taken care of at the same time. And Dottie's asking him how much snow B.H. Ringer has. Let's see. Moving on down. Bill Webb. Good afternoon, Jerry and friends. It's rainy 56 day here. It's pretty warm here today. Says 55 right now. But yeah, the sun being out and everything, it's really nice. It's supposed to get really warm over the weekend, and then I think it's going to start raining. I'm going to try really hard to get some of the roof on that building during this warm spell. I don't think I'll get very far because you got to remember that's a couple of stories up now from the ground. It's not that high from up on the driveway, but where you're going to fall, it's 2 stories. It's a long ways. And well, it's 2 short stories because they're not full 8-foot ceilings. They're only 7 foot, but it's only a couple feet less, so it's going to hurt if you fall. So I got to make sure I figure out a way to do that relatively safe. I want to do most of it from inside the building, and I think I can. But some of it's going to have to be done from outside and up a ladder type thing. Let's see, moving on down. Gino says, hi, Jerry and friends. The snow is melting here in Monroe, Ohio. Hope everyone is doing well. Well, good. Thank you. Let's see, moving on down. I haven't even got to where we went live yet. Rod Wentler says, a big howdy to Jerry and the gang, and howdy back. Let's see. Dottie Hillenbrandt's asking him if he heats with wood, B.H. Ringer. Let's see, moving on down further. Eric says there should be a calorie refund for things that don't taste as good as you expected. Yeah, I'd vote for that. Put Trump on it. Maybe he'll get that passed for you. Let's see, Bill Mumbo. I think Norley's has a good soul and people see that in her. Well, I agree with that. She draws our crowd everywhere she goes. It's crazy. And you know that not everybody, those people know who she is. She just seems to draw a crowd somehow. I don't get it. I guess if I, was a blonde girl riding a motorcycle, I might draw a crowd too. I don't know. It's crazy. Dottie says, Jerry, how do you know what and how to cut on your sawmill to get the maximum wood out of the log? Well, Dottie, it's kind of like this. You just start cutting. It works out the way it works out pretty much. If I had a valuable log on there, well, then I'd do a lot more measuring and stuff. But I've kind of, on those small cedar logs, they all kind of work out about the same. They're all about the same size, roughly. And, it's not much to it. I just kind of have it worked out in my head. I usually can get about 3 2x6s out of each one of them because they're not very big. And so by the time you do that, it's basically a square, about 6 inches square, roughly, and you get 3 out of there generally. And that's about the way it works. Now, occasionally, some of those cedars are a little bigger, and maybe I'll get 2x8s instead, but maybe I'll get 4 of them. You know what I'm saying? But that's about all I'm cutting out of those anyway. But when you do have a high dollar value log, you generally do do a little more planning and try to figure it out and, draw lines on it or whatever you have to do to try to get the best yield out of the log. Cedar's not that valuable. But you know what? After cutting all this cedar, I'm kind of in love with that stuff. I really like using it. I like, it. You can drive nails in it good. You can put screws in it well. It's just good stuff. I like it. I doubt I'll be buying much commercial lumber in the future. I mean, whenever I got to build a building or anything, I'm probably just going to build it out of cedar. It lasts really well, holds up really good. Let's see, Wavy Gravy. I knew a guy who decided to take a break while sawing wood, but he accidentally sat down on his chainsaw. He very quickly got behind in his work. Yeah, I guess you would get your behind in your work if you sit down on your chainsaw. Eddie Turner, I was going to say if the log was barely long enough after you cut a little off it, is it still barely long enough? But I decided not to. The thing is that building it doesn't need specific dimensional lumber, if you will, because those big trusses are just where they are. They're not set on 16-inch centers like your normal. So pretty much any length of wood kind of works up there because you're going to saw it off anyway to kind of fall in the center of one of those big beams, if you will, those big trusses. So it didn't really matter if I cut that one off or not. And I thought, well, the end on that one had no knots in it. And I thought, well, that's a perfect cedar piece to use, for shingles. That's why I did what I did. Eddie Turner, I read that one. Let's see, Brian Biscup, good afternoon. Brian Biscup, Elgin, Illinois. Good cutting. Thank you. Let's see, Bill Webb, put some tight bond on that board and clamp it. I could do that. I could actually do that, and it would be just fine. And I stood it up inside the barn there. I even have thought about that. It's just that wood's so darn wet right now that I thought probably not the best time to do that. Bill Rhodes, Julia, I was watching you, or I guess I read this while the video was playing, and his phone said Julia instead of Jerry, I guess. I was watching you cut that long ago, and I thought about you probably should put a shield on those wheels. Yep. Yeah, a lot of people say that, and quite honestly, it would be nice to have a guard on there. Guards are good and bad. They cause almost as many problems as they solve. I've just made it my practice to be careful. If you want to talk about something that you can get hurt with, look at a chainsaw. I mean, seriously. Chainsaws are not your friend. They're ready to kill you at every moment. They're wanting to kick back. They're wanting to go cut through and cut your leg off. And, those are dangerous. This, to me, while it's very dangerous, if you get into it, it's going to cut you up bad. You got to remember, I'm always 4 feet behind it because I'm pushing from the back. And I don't go in front of it when the wheel's spinning. I'm not saying I never do, but I'm just saying that, I'm very aware. If I do walk around it while that wheel's spinning, I'm very aware that I'm doing that, and I pay attention. And I don't do it very often. It's really rare if I walk around it while that thing is spinning. In fact, I just don't do that normally. I always make sure the blade stops spinning first. And there's never anybody around, so I'm not worried about it. I mean, if the blade comes off, I'll tell you what happens. It just rolls down the grass yard. It'll go down there about 50 yards and just roll down there and fall over. It hasn't done that in years, honestly. It did that, when I was first learning to use the sawmill. I pulled the blade off twice, and it just rolled down there and did its thing and fell over. And actually, in a lot of ways, that's better than having the guard on there. It's not better for safety, I'll just tell you that, but it's better for economics. It doesn't tear your blade up. Where, like, if you got your guard on there and that metal guard and your blade hits that metal guard, your blade's no good. And you just ruined a $30 blade or whatever it is. So there you go. I'm not trying to be hard-nosed about it. You know, if there was a real easy way to put a guard on it, I'd probably do it. It just ain't easy. And it ain't, in my opinion, it just ain't necessary. Like I said, a chainsaw is, I would say, 10 times more dangerous than that saw is. And I use chainsaws pretty much every day. And I'm not saying I'm not saying I can't get hurt with a chainsaw. Don't hear me say stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying, by comparison, the chainsaw is way more dangerous, and I have to use that all the time. So you just got to be really careful. You just got to be very mindful of it and be careful. That's all you can do, you know. So I try. I do my best. Zappa, Jerry, the other day you mentioned shooting accuracy. My grandfather told me something which seems silly, but is great wisdom. Don't look at what you shoot what you look at. Yeah, well, there's some truth to that too. I've told this many times before, but I, was really into competitive archery for many years and very close to making the Olympics. In fact, I think I could have made the Olympics, except for the fact that stupid coach made me jump on that dang trampoline, and you can still see the hump in my shoulder right there. There's just a huge knot in my shoulder. It tore this shoulder so bad out of socket that I couldn't raise my wrist above my belt for months. I mean, it was bad. And after that, then I always looked like the hunchback shooting from that point on. This knot would get huge on my shoulder when I was shoot a lot. So I was still good. To be honest, I was still very good at shooting. Like, I did go to one tournament. That was like when I was a teenager when that happened. And I did go to one huge tournament when I was in my 30s. I told you about this before, where my best friend at Bell at the time, Gary, he was dying of cancer, and he said, he had never seen me shoot. He had just heard me talk about it, about archery, and he wanted to see me shoot in a tournament. And I hadn't shot in a tournament in well over 10 years. And I said, okay, we'll do that, And then he whips out the paper and throws it right in front of me when I say that. He says, there's a tournament this weekend. Can we go? I went, okay. Well, keep in mind, I got this shoulder thing. And then when we get to this tournament, this was an outdoor 3D tournament. And you walk through trails and you shoot at deer and squirrels and, coyotes and whatever else, these are 3D targets, and they're set at any particular distance, and you don't know the distance. They're just out there in the woods. They can be 10 yards, they can be 50 yards. Well, and they can even be 80 yards, as one of the targets was in this case. But anyway, when we pulled up there was over 300 shooters entered in that competition. And, I was especially inspired to shoot well because he was, dying of cancer. I mean, literally, he only had a very short time to live. And, in fact, he was, struggling to walk even. But he wanted to see me shoot in this tournament. And by God, I was going to show him, And they had moving targets and everything, like targets that were on pulleys that would roll down through the woods, and you had to shoot those moving with a bow. Well, I was doing really well. I mean, I really, really was doing really well. Better than probably I would have ever expected to do. And when we got done, I was in third place. And one of the targets was 80 yards, and nobody was hitting it. Not a single person was hitting it. I mean, like, we were in a line. It was probably 20 shooters long, waiting to shoot that target, and you could just watch, and everybody was missing it. Nobody was hitting it. And if they did hit it, they were hitting it like in the ear or on the foot or something like that, you know. So I had made up my mind before I got up there that that target had to be 80 yards. I mean, it's ridiculous. You don't normally hunt that far. You just don't normally shoot that far. I mean, generally, a 30 or 40 yard shot with a bow is a really long shot. So 80 yards is ridiculous. But I had just made up my mind that's what it was. Well, I didn't have an 80-yard sight on my bow. And if you know anything about bow sights, well, they can be a lot of different things, but especially back then, they were pins, and you'd have, actually it's on this side for me, this would be your 50, 40, 30, and 20. And I think that's what I had on there, I believe. And so there's 10, 20, 30 yards between there. So what I did was I put my 50-yard pin, like if I'm looking at, my eye right there, I put my 50-yard pin on my eye. I think that's how I did it. And then I looked at my 20-yard pin, and I saw that my 20-yard pin was on like a yellow leaf. It was like perfect. And so I got it right on the heart of that deer, and this 20-yard pin was on a yellow leaf. So I just raised my 50-yard pin up to that yellow leaf and just held on it perfectly, let go, hit that deer square in the heart. I was the only one that hit it in the heart. And, and then when we finally got up there to the award ceremony, well, I was third, and while I was standing in line to get my third place trophy, there was and Gary was standing right next to me. His last name was McGee, Gary McGee. He was standing there, and this guy walks up to me, and he says, "You do know you got screwed on this tournament, don't you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, those guys that got first and second?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "They're the ones that set up the course. They knew all the yardages." Well, see, I didn't know any of the yardages. I had to guess on every one. And with a bow, that makes a lot of difference because you got those pins at different yardages. And so you have to guess the yardages. So had they not been in the tournament, which back in my day when I was shooting competitively, that would not have been allowed. You would not have been allowed to shoot in the tournament that you set the targets up for on that kind of a tournament. Now, you could have on a target tournament where all the targets are at the same distance. That wouldn't have made any difference. But on this kind of a tournament, you would not have been allowed to shoot in that. But anyway, I did get my third place, and Gary was impressed, to say the least. But that's my point about the aiming, is that you aim small and you miss small. But if if you're just, I think that's where most people screw up when they're shooting at a live animal, a deer or whatever. They're up like this and bang, they just pull the trigger, type of thing. Well, I'm not trying to hit the deer. I'm trying to hit the 3 hairs right there where the heart is. That's what I'm aiming at. I'm aiming at that little tiny spot. And when you aim like that, you typically don't miss far, And it's just really good practice for anything. Anytime you're doing anything that needs accuracy, like even swinging that axe, it's the same difference. You concentrate on that specific spot that you want to hit, and you won't miss far if you do that. Okay, anyway, moving on. Bill Mumble says, fix that board with hide glue. Don't think so. Let's see. Wavy Gravy. My granddad built a car entirely out of wood. It had wooden seats, wooden doors, wooden steering wheel, wooden floors, wooden engine. Unfortunately, I tried to start it and it wouldn't work. I knew that was coming. See, Dottie Hillebrand, Jerry, with you being dyslexic, do you see letters backwards? You know, it's just weird. There's times I look at stuff and it seems, I guess, like it's normal. And there's times I look at stuff and I hardly see anything. I don't know how to explain it. It's just weird. I'm not sure I am dyslexic. I just, because I've never been diagnosed, I just know there's something that ain't right. That's all I know for sure. It just, like I said, when I was a kid, my biggest fear was that the teacher, I'm not kidding you about this. This like just sent chills up my back, man. It just scared me to death when the teacher would call on me to read out loud. I hated that. Like I said, if she said, get up in front of the class and tell a story, that's not a problem. I can do that. But I can't read out loud especially when I was a kid. It was bad. Cup of cool. You being easy, not it's LOL. Oh, I guess you're saying it dyslexic-wise. Let's see. Kim Williford. Hi, Jerry and everyone. I missed you guys. It's great to be back. I don't much mobile network for Wi-Fi. That's why I've been gone so long. Well, we're glad to have you back, Kim. I had noticed you weren't commenting. Let's see. Ronald Todd. Bill, you're stirring the hide glue pot. Let's see. Eddie Turner. I was just pulling a Tharp. Let's see. Dottie Hildebrand. Have you seen a new way to start a chainsaw? Pull the cord all the way out and let go, and it's supposed to start. Think that works? You have to have a special chainsaw for that. It does actually work. Like that one, that white one you saw in the video, that has the automatic start on it. My orange saw doesn't have that. My Husqvarna saw, the big saw, it's a regular pull start. You got to pull it to start it. But the steel saw, it's an MS251C. It has, I don't even know what that technology is called, but it's an automatic start. So basically you just pull the cord out all the way like that, and then it kicks over and it starts itself. And at first I didn't like that, but now I do like it. It works really good, actually. Probably just something else to go wrong, but fortunately, knock on wood, it hasn't gone wrong so far. Kim says, I missed everybody, including Jerry. Well, thank you, Kim. Let's see. Bill Rhodes. Jerry, your shirt tail was inches from that wheel. I don't think so, Bill. It may look like that in the video, but it wasn't inches from that wheel. It's like 4 feet. It's 48 inches from that wheel. It's back behind it. Might have been while it was standing still, might have been close, but I'm not close to it while it's moving. Wavy Gravy. I have an agnostic friend who has insomnia and dyslexia. He lies in bed at night and wonders if there is a dog. I knew that one was coming. I've heard that one before. Let's see. Bill Rhodes. My game was pool. Well, I'm average on pool, but we've got a 9-foot pool table right through that window right there. You can see it in the other room there. I bought it with the house. It's one of those big, regulation full size ones. It's 9-footer. I don't play very often, but I can do okay with it. My dad was way better at stuff like that than me. Like, for instance, my dad was really good with basketball. I mean, he could shoot like nobody's business. And he's the guy that wouldn't let me do sports. You have to understand. But he was really good at like basketball and pool. He was good at that. He was also really good. And this is the thing I never, ever saw him miss. And I know you're going to say, oh, come on, surely not. I'm seriously telling you, I've never saw him miss. And that is, he'd stand up on the tractor. Now, the tractor's moving, you understand, and he'd see a rabbit take off running. He would reach down, grab a wrench out of his little toolbox there on the side, chuck that wrench, and it'd be 20 yards out there, 60 feet away. He'd hit that rabbit and knock that sucker right out every time. And I mean, like, I never saw him miss. And I actually said that to him one day. I said, how in the world do you always hit those things? I've never seen you miss one of those things like that. He goes, oh, I wouldn't dare miss, especially when I was a kid. I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, oh, I'd get a whipping if I missed. What? He's going, yeah, Dad would say I was wasting rocks. So I guess that's where it came from. I don't know, but he was really good at throwing stuff like that. He was an incredible shot. I was pretty good with a baseball throwing like that. I could pretty much hit what I was aiming at with a baseball, but that was about it. Rock, basically, I could throw a rock pretty good. But the wrench thing, not so much. Bill Rhodes, I was number 5 out of 87 APA. Cool. Let's see. Theron Corbett, stacking pins on unmarked 3D targets is a lost art. Yeah. I used to really just enjoy the heck out of archery. It was my favorite thing to do. All the kids in school, I think I was 15 or something like that, and they all at school they called me Robin Hood, and it wasn't a degrading thing. They just, I mean, they were, you know when they're putting you down and when they're not, and they weren't putting me down. It was just kind of that was just my nickname, you know. And the coaches, they're the same. Well, no, it wasn't the same one that made me jump on the trampoline, I don't think. No, it wasn't. But one of the coaches, he said, if you'll teach my archery classes, he says, I'll get you passes out of all your classes, and you don't have to go to class. I said, works for me. And so in my senior year, I hardly ever went to class, hardly ever. And I taught archery all day long down in the gym. And that was the year I got my best grades. I made pretty much straight A's in my senior year. I think I graduated 13th in my class at 300, which isn't too bad for a dyslexic kind of guy, you know. So anyway. Simon Jardine, can you do anything with the sawdust chippings from your woodworking activities? Yeah, all the sawdust, it generally ends up in the horse stalls and things like that, and or in the chicken house, things like that. Kim Williford, could you replace a pull start with an electric? Well, I mean, I guess you could just about do anything, you know, if you wanted to. For instance, that motor that engine that's on that Sawmill, it has both it does have a pull start on it, but it also has an electric start. So yeah, you definitely can do that kind of thing. Typically, if the motor doesn't come with an electric start, it would be difficult to convert it to that. But it's possible. Bill Mumbo, Jerry, my brother is dyslexic, and he says the words and letters move around. He's 67 now, can read slowly. Fortunately, his kids aren't affected. Yeah, I don't know what I have. It just ain't good. I know that. I never could read well. I just never could. It actually is probably better now quite a bit better now than it was when I was a kid. I think I've just gotten used to it. It's what it really amounts to. Bill Rose says, when I was a kid, I had a Husqvarna dirt bike. Yep. Yeah, I've seen those. I don't know anything about that, but I've seen them. Did anybody else lose Jerry's audio? Rod Wentler's asking. Ronald Todd says, yeah, I did. I had to log off and back on. Isn't that weird? I don't know. Kim Williford, Robin Hood was the best archer in the world. He split an arrow in half at the target and won the 6 golden arrows that belonged to his father. Yep. Yeah. I always did. That was, my favorite movie of all time was the Robin Hood movie. Errol Flynn, that was my favorite movie. I just loved watching that. And what you may or may not know is that the guy that did the trick shooting in that movie was Howard Hill. Howard Hill really, really was just an incredible archer. He didn't use sights. He did everything instinct shooting. And I can do that too. I'm pretty good at instinct shooting. Not quite as good as Howard Hill, but I'm pretty good at instinct shooting as well as sight shooting. And but he was really good at it. I never did get to meet him or see him. He was a little more before my time. But the only story that I heard sort of firsthand about Howard Hill was the guy that owned the archery range. He had met him a few times. And he said that he went to it was either the Fox Theater in St. Louis where we got to play that one time with my band when we won that competition. But I think it was the Fox Theater, and Howard Hill was there doing an archery exhibition shoot type thing. And he was up in the upper balcony shooting down across all the people down to the stage, and I think there were 3 balloons, one inside of each other, and there was only like a 1-inch space between each balloon, something like that. And Howard Hill from the upper balcony, instinct now, no sights or nothing, just a long bow and an arrow. That's all he had. And he shot the outer balloon first, then the middle balloon, and then the inner balloon. And what I forgot to tell you, he was using a 2-inch wide broadhead. That's some shooting now. I'm seriously telling you. That's how he ended his show. And anyway, like I said, that was a first-hand account. It wasn't me, unfortunately. I didn't get to see it. Kim Williford, I was talking about the broken chainsaw where the starting rope broke. Maybe I mentioned that a while back that I had to fix that or something. All of that is fixed, if that's what you're asking. I did fix it, and I had to get a heavier rope. The rope I had was too small, but I did get that fixed. Theron Corbett says, Howard Hill. Yep, Howard Hill. He was pretty cool. Somebody says Bill says only 59 thumbs up. So if you guys would click that thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. Would very much appreciate it. It does really help, believe it or not. Dottie Hildebrand, don't you think to be that good with archery, it's a God-given talent along with practice? Yeah, I do think so. Yeah, there's no question about it, really. I don't know. It's just bragging to say this, but it's true, and so I'm going to say it anyway. And that is that, I've shot a lot of animals, a lot of them, with a bow and with a gun both. And to this day, I've never lost. No, I take that back. I did lose one. I've only lost one animal that I've shot with a bow and arrow or a gun. And I was able to get all of them, and generally speaking, they fell within view. I mean, like they maybe took one step and were down, gone, because I to this day, I've never, well, here's one more exception. I shot one deer in the guts with a bow and arrow, and I've never hit one in the guts with a gun. And, that's not average. If you've been around a bunch of hunters and things, or see them checked in at the places where you take deers to check them in after you've shot them, they're shot all to pieces. I mean, the back legs are broken off. They're shot through the guts. They're shot through the head. They've shot everywhere. But pretty much all of mine, were shot right through the heart, lungs. Just all of them, pretty much. I did shoot one in the guts with a bow one time. He was walking really, really fast. I mean, this deer was walking real fast. And I only had a hole 30 yards away, or maybe even 35 yards away. The hole was about that big, just about the size of a paper plate. And I saw him coming, and I knew he was going, and I'm watching, and it was real thick brush. There's no holes anywhere. And I see this one hole that's about, he's quite a ways from it, but I'm aiming at that hole, and I'm thinking when he gets at the edge of that hole, I'm shooting through that hole, and I'm going to get this guy. Well, he got through the hole faster than I expected, and I hit him in the guts. But other than that, I've never shot one in the guts. Let's see. Bill Rhodes, Jerry, my brother told me how to instinct shoot, or taught me how to instinct shoot. Yep. Yeah, it's an art in itself. I learned how to instinct shoot at rabbits, believe it or not. I told you Sue's cousin, Gary Bickmeyer, was my best friend growing up, and he and I both were really into archery, and we would go walking around and kicking up rabbits out in the fields, and a rabbit would take off running, and we would whip around with no sights or nothing, just whip around and throw an arrow at it, And we didn't hit them every time, I'll be honest, but man, that makes you a good shot when you practice like that all the time, and we had a lot of practice at it. And the funny thing was, after I got, I was a lot better shot than Gary was. Gary was way better tracker, 10 times better tracker than I was, 100 times better tracker. I've never seen anything like Gary when it came to tracking. He was incredible. But so he could hit him, like I said, he'd hit him in the back leg, and he'd track him until he found him, It was incredible. He was just incredible. I've been on many a tracking thing with Gary where we would track a deer over 2 miles, and he'd find it, boy, and we'd get it. It was amazing. But he was the worst shot ever. And we'd be shooting at targets, and we had these things called bounce outs, where your arrow will bounce out and then it's just laying there. Well, especially we would shoot at this pond bank. Well, it would hit, maybe your arrow would hit a small rock or something, and it wouldn't stick in the dirt, and it would fall over sideways, whatever. Anytime that would happen, Gary would start cussing and screaming. He'd, because he knew I was going to shoot his arrow. I'd pull up and I'd shoot his arrow in half, So it was pretty funny. I would do that all the time. Let's see. Yeah, Bill says you get pretty good at draw. Yeah, and yeah, it's all one motion pretty much when you're instinct shooting. Yeah, you don't spend a lot of time aiming. You pull up and you just kind of nail it, and it works if you're used to doing it. You got to be pretty used to doing it though. Kim Williford, you can fix that board after it's dried completely with hide glue, and you can still use it for something. Yeah, I'm planning on using hide glue for sure. Wavy gravy. Byron Ferguson is also a monster archer. Yeah, he was really good. Byron is very, very good. I never met him either. I did meet a lot of world champions and a lot of just very historic figures in archery. I met Mr. Hoyt, Earl Hoyt was his name. I met his father. They called him Pop Hoyt. I met his wife. Earl's wife was Ann Weber Hoyt. All of those people were world champions at one time. I met Darrell Pace, who became an Olympic and world champion many times over. I met Hardy Ward, I'm trying to remember all their names, Doug Brothers, Richard McKinney, all of these people were world champions and stuff, and I shot with all of them, and they all, at that time, knew who I was. I mean, they wouldn't remember me now because I never did really advance to that level because of, I think, mostly because of the accident that happened to me. I was pretty young when I shot with all those guys for the most part. But they definitely knew I was up and coming, and I just didn't get it all the way to the top. Daddy Hillebrand, Jerry, when you were shooting the bow, was it long bow or compound bow? I never went to a compound until very late in my career. I always shot a recurve bow. And all of my Olympic competition, and it has to be, when you're going into the Olympics, it has to be a recurve type bow. So it's just a string, just a stick and string bow, not with no pulleys and all that stuff. So it took me a very long time to get into the compound. And Earl Hoyt, as I told you, he's one of the biggest archery companies in the world, Hoyt Archery. They were trying to get me into a compound. And Daryl Dixon, in fact, was another world champion. He owned an archery range. And Daryl called me up one weekend, and I don't remember if it was a Sunday. I think it was a Sunday. He says, we just came out with a new bow at Hoyt. Daryl worked for Earl Hoyt also. Anyway, he called me and says, we just came out with this new compound bow. He says, you're going to like this. This thing doesn't stack, and it's just a two-wheeler type thing, and you're going to really like it. I said, well, I'll try it. So he had one at his archery range, and he opened up the archery range for me that day. It was normally closed, and I went down there and met him, and I shot the bow, and I liked it. I said, I love it. I said, but you know what? It's got to be 70 pounds or I'm not interested. And he's going, well, we only make it in 50. I said, well, if you make it in 70, I'll buy it. Because I wanted to, I was very strong at pulling the bow. The weight wasn't an issue for me. And I want the most lethal thing you can get and with the least drop, So anyway, it wasn't but very short time after that, Daryl called me back and says, Earl said I can make you one in 70 pounds. And so he made me one in 70 pounds. I got the very first one they ever made in 70 pounds. And Daryl made it himself, and he got the logo, the Hoyt logo, slightly crooked on the limbs, which would have been a second anywhere else. They wouldn't have been able to sell it. But I didn't care, about that. And I still got that bow somewhere. It's hanging up somewhere around here. By today's technology, it's not that great, but at the time, it was some kind of bow to get that in 70 pounds. Let's see. And I shot a lot of deer with it, by the way. Dottie Hildebrandt, Jerry, when you... let's see. Dottie, do you clean your deer or take them to a processor? I always did process them all myself. I don't know. Toward the end of when I started shooting them, I'd take a few of them. But honestly, most of the time I wasn't real happy with the processors around here especially. Let's see. Jerry, I used to rabbit hunt with a pistol. Yeah, I did that too. I 22 pistol, in fact. And I've shot quite a few of them too, running. And that's another thing is a deer I would shoot standing. But on a rabbit, I would never shoot them standing. They always had to be running or I wouldn't shoot at them. And just the way it was. Let's see. I think that's it. Don't see any more comments, and I appreciate you all being here. I guess I'm going to go ahead and bite the bullet and take that doggone Kawasaki into the dealer. It's been sitting here for over a month, and it won't start. So got to get something done with it. Thank you all for being here. We will see you tomorrow with something else.